I really enjoy having canned meat in my pantry, and one of those would be canned beef. The beef is actually fabulous for making shredded beef. You can add barbecue sauce to it and put it into sandwiches. You can add it into soup. I mean, you can do so many things with it. The key is that it's fully cooked and you don't have to defrost it. So really works nice for a quick on-the-go meal. The most popular cut of beef to use for this would be the chuck roast. All I need to do for it is cut out the bone and any excess fat. My particular roast doesn't have a lot of excess fat. My brother raises longhorns and they're just a really lean cow. So the first thing I do is go through and cut all of the meat off the bone. I find that once the bone is out of the way, it's a lot easier not to have to work around it to get that fat off. I'm not super picky about getting all of the meat off my bone because I'll just throw this in a pot and I'll make a big batch of soup for tonight. And this is when I'll go back through and I'll pull out any of that excess fat. One of the nice things about pressure canning is any gristle or hard portions, tendons, they just kind of melt. Now that I've gotten the majority of the fat off it, I cut it into 1-inch strips. And then I'll place those right in my quart-sized jars. You could do this in pint-sized jars if you wanted to. You would just cut in half the salt and then reduce your processing time. Now I'll add 1 teaspoon of salt to each of the jars. If I was doing pint-sized jars, I would do half of a teaspoon. This not only preserves it, but it makes it taste a little bit better too. I then fill it up to 1 inch of headspace with hot water. And now I'll go through with my wooden chopstick and I'll release any bubbles of air that have been trapped in there. I'll then go back through and fine-tune my headspace. If there's enough air bubbles, it will actually drop down the water level. I'll then use a cloth that I've dipped in white vinegar to wipe off the edge of my jars, and that just makes it so that if any of the oils got on the edge of the jar, that it won't interfere with the seal. And then I'll place on my lids and rings until they're fingertip tight. To prepare my canner, I'll place in 3 quarts of hot water, and then I'll place in my jars. I need to process these in the pressure canner for 90 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure. If I'm at sea level, I'm at 1,200 feet, so I'll go for 11 pounds of pressure. So then I'll lock on my lid. I'll place it on the stove on medium to high heat until it starts to vent out of the back. Now that it's begun to vent, I'll set a timer for 10 minutes. It's been venting for 10 minutes, so now I'll put the weight over the vent. And now the pressure should start to climb. So I'll watch my gauge, and as it gets close to my 11 pounds of pressure, I'll decrease the heat and I'll go a little bit more, just to kind of fine tune it. Now, once it hits 11 pounds of pressure, that's when I'll start my timer for 90 minutes. If for any reason, at any time during that 90 minutes, it drops below the 11 pounds of pressure, then I have to restart my timer. And so I try really hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. But on the other hand, I don't want the pressure to be too high either, because that leads to a lot more leakage, and that's not a good thing either. Now that it's done processing, I'll turn off the heat and allow the pressure to come down on its own. Now that the gauge is down at 0 and the pressure indicator is down, I'll remove the weight. This is kind of a safety feature so that if there is any pressure still in there, it will escape at that point. And then I'll unlock my lid and remove it, turning it away from me so that the steam doesn't go in my face. And then I'll let this rest for 10 minutes. I'll then take the jars out of the canner and place them on a heat-resistant surface about 1 to 2 inches apart. This is just so that it cools quickly. I allow them to rest on the counter for 24 hours so that they can get a good seal. I know they've gotten a good seal if the center of the lid is depressed down. Then I'll remove the ring, wash it with hot soapy water, and store it in a cool, dry, dark location like my pantry for the next 1 to 3 years. If for some reason it didn't seal, I would put it in my refrigerator and use it right away.